Hello, BookTube. We're continuing with my library tour. I am still on the bouncy cam. I'm just sitting on the bed instead of standing on the bed. So we're going to continue on with this bookcase, and we've got some transverse books. So we'll start with those. And the first one, the first one is an old Bones Classical Library edition of Horace. It'd be familiar. It looks familiar to a lot of you. It was from over a century ago. I don't know that I even have a date on this thing. This is allegedly what our poet looked like as a youth. He didn't. He was a fat speckled thing. And then there's the page itself. And this is just these were trots. They were trots of very basic translations of the classics, and more than just the classics. Some of them are interesting in a way. Some of them stay interesting. I mainly get them I mainly keep them just if they're about my absolute favorite authors, and this one is. Okay. All right, this next one is the battered old thing. This is also old. This is J.A. Symonds. This has had a lot of editions. I don't know when this was. This is well over 100 years old, though, I bet. This is a series, English Men of Letters. This is about Sir Philip Sidney. Biographical sketches and brief looks at the work. No value whatsoever, and this thing is torn to pieces. So I'm not really sure what it's doing here. Okay. This next one is Joseph Lincoln. He will not be familiar to a lot of you. Once upon a time, he was familiar to every American because he was a best-selling author, but not anymore. And this is nonfiction he wrote with Harold Brett. This is called Cape Cod Yesterdays. It is actually a lovely thing. It's full of color illustrations, and it's about Cape Cod is, as I've described a few times, the state of Massachusetts here in the United States where I live is a rectangle with a hook off to one side, jutting out into the ocean, and that hook is Cape Cod. It's always been a popular place to go for different demographics over the centuries, and this is Joseph Lincoln looking back at ye olden days of Cape Cod. Only since this was written in the 1930s. When was this done? 1935. Since this was done in 1935, this is also now the olden days. The days that he knew himself are a century ago. So I love books like this. Absolutely love it. I've spent so much time on Cape Cod okay. All right. This is Gladys Tabor. She also was a best-selling author, but it was too long ago. You won't remember her. She was from 50, 60 years ago. She wrote a series of books called the Still Meadow books. She did about her life on an idyllic country farm. And she wrote one, and it took off. It absolutely took off. And so she did a whole bunch of sequels, even a cookbook. And this is not one of those books. This is instead My Own Cape Cod. She had a place on Cape Cod and wrote a book about Cape Cod. And it's lovely. It's got lovely photographs in it. It's a fantastic book. I love books like this. I love writing about the Cape in all its weathers, in all its moods, in all its periods. I have a Cape Cod book in me myself. But anyway, those are the transverse books. Then we'll go on to the main shelf here. The first one is by Natalie Tyler. It's The Friendly Jane Austen. Some of you may recognize this. There was a series of these: The Friendly Shakespeare, The Friendly Universe, The Friendly Dickens. This is The Friendly Jane Austen. They're designed to be very accessible opening guides to these subjects or these authors. I think this book has the whole contents of one novel in it. Doesn't it? Let's see here. Let's see. It's got a whole bunch of dedicated articles and overviews and appreciations from other authors. I could have sworn this had a whole novel in it as well. Maybe I'm remembering something wrong about that. This is from the 1999, and maybe it doesn't. Maybe this doesn't have the whole of the work. I thought it did. But anyway, it has a ton of excerpts and great Osteniana. It's just a wonderful it's a wonderful series, just wonderfully engaging. I wish I had the Friendly Shakespeare. When I see it, I will grab it. Okay, this next one is a translation. This is a translation of Virgil's Aeneid, so it actually belongs with the Robert Fitzgerald translation. They all belong together. I should rearrange these shelves. This is the Stanley Lombardo Aeneid, and it continues the tradition of Lombardo. He also did the big three. He did Homer, he did the Iliad, the Odyssey, and now the Aeneid. And it continues the book design of those earlier volumes by having a very contemporary cover. This is the Vietnam War memorial in the background. And Lombardo is a strange translator. He's less tradition bound than most of the other major 20th century translators. So his Iliad and especially his Odyssey are very distinct reading experiences. And I found the same thing was true of his Aeneid, but I really need to read it again. I really do. Not necessarily his Homer, but I need to read his Virgil again. I actually want to reread the Aeneid, and I'm thinking, those of you who've been following this channel at an unhealthy length of time, I read the Iliad every June, and I read the Odyssey every August. And I've been seriously thinking for over a decade of reading the Aeneid every year as well. It's a more autumnal book. I would read it probably in October. And I'm thinking about doing that and then just working my way slowly through all of the different Aeneids. But the Lombardo is one I need to get to soon. Okay. All right, this is David Goldblatt. I have this book because I absolutely love it, even though I don't know anything at all about the subject. What I know about the subject, I basically know from this book. I don't watch it. I don't dote over it. I don't obsess about it. But I love this book. This is The Ball is Round, a global history of soccer. And it's just terrific. I couldn't put it down, even though it's, about a sport about which I know almost nothing and care almost nothing. It's a perfect example of the wonders of nonfiction, of what nonfiction can do. I don't know how much fiction we're going to have on this shelf. Aside from this next one is fiction, and it's a whopper. This is the room's second copy of the Peviar and Volkonsky War and Peace. This is a nice big floppy trade paperback. We saw the hardcover much earlier in this library tour. And these two, Peviar and Volkonsky, are famous translators. They are that rare phenomenon when a translator or a translating team suddenly becomes famous in their own right and everybody wants their translation. So they're working their way through the Russian classics. In 2020, they're doing the stories of Chekhov. And this was, eagerly awaited by a lot of people as sort of the big thing, the sine qua non. Not their Anna Karenina, which was not only a best-selling translation, but was tapped by Oprah for her book club, giving it that extra 5 million sales that you really want for the added note of security. But I had a lot of quibbles with their War and Peace. In memory, I like it more. The more I think about it, I need to revisit it. I need to revisit the War and Peace as well as the Aeneid. All right. We saw this. This has come out in paperback now. This is the hardcover of Bruce Schneier's Click Here to Kill Everybody, which is just amazing. It's just an amazing book that is so prescient. I mean, this came out, 2 years ago? Almost 2 years ago? It must have a pub sheet in it. Yes, it does have a pub sheet in it. This is from September of 2018. And it's all about not only online security, but also our online lives. Who and what we're doing online. You are your data. You are a collection of data. And everybody wants your data, even though you don't know that. It's your most precious commodity, and you don't take any control over it at all. You don't control it. You don't monetize it. You don't even know where it goes. And this is a book about a lot of that. So I thought it was fantastic. And I just recently got the paperback. So, oh goodness gracious. Okay, this is edited by Simon Novell Smith. This is a gigantic book called Edwardian England. Just a gigantic thing that's full of independently commissioned essays on transportation and war and literature and eating and the poor and all that sort of stuff, all about Edwardian England. And it's just a fantastic scholarly work. I don't think it could ever be beaten for what it is. And I love it because I have a distinct sweet tooth for the Edwardian era. Okay. All right. This next one we've met this author just yesterday. This is The Museum of Fine Arts, A Centennial History by Walter Muir Whitehill, who was an absolute fixture in the Boston historical, the Boston art scene, the Boston book scene. A wonderful, wonderful guy. And here he tells the story of the beginning of the MFA, the big, fantastic art museum here in Boston that I would drag you to if you came to visit me. We would go to the MFA and I would bore you about Watson and the Shark and the Egyptian exhibit, and then we would cross the street to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum and I'd bore you all over again. It's a great museum, and this is Whitehill is such a great writer that he could write about anything and I would read it, but this was fantastic. Okay, all right, so another author that I really, really love, and this, I think, is my favorite of all her books. This is Susan Jacoby, and this is Strange Gods. A nice, big, hefty thing that is a historical look at conversion, at people who changed their gods, and why they do it, and how they do it, and when in their lives they do it. And Jacoby, I mean, she doesn't harp, she's not shrill on the subject, but she can't avoid the strangeness of that. You can't just decide yes, I've believed in one whole supernatural cosmology for all of these years. Now I'm going to decide to believe in another one. You can't just decide. It's a very strange thing to decide to do something like that. And she wrote a whole book about it, and it's fantastic. Great. All right, this is a kind of rare. This is a relatively new work of history. This is, I don't know if I have a pub sheet. This is the paperback from, paperback came out in 2018. I still made it into this room because I love it so much, but I didn't keep the hardcover. I sent the hardcover to one of you. So I just kept the paperback. This is The Framers' Coup by Michael Klarman. It's the making of the United States Constitution, a big, fat, wonderfully detailed book about the drive for federal consolidation of power, and how the word coup is there in the title because it had to be hidden from the American people who had just fought a war to avoid having a gigantic and totally unaccountable power sitting over them in judgment politically, militarily, coercively. And the framers of the Constitution, in their majority, decided that kind of a government was the only thing that would save the new country from immediate ruin. So you would need to do that. You would need a strong, centralized federal government that could tax and regulate. And they did their best, I guess, to make it balanced and accountable. But there's no way to do that. There's no way to make that such a creature balanced and accountable. It takes it about 10 years to become self-aware, and then it doesn't care about you anymore. It's a thing on its own. And that's very, very dangerous. And this is a terrific book on that whole subject. Oh boy. Oh, fantastic. All right. These next three are the Centennial History of the Civil War by one of the greatest historians in American history, and that is Bruce Catton. So we have The Coming Fury, we have Terrible Swift Sword, and we have Never Call Retreat. This is an amazing historical accomplishment. And if it seems to you like, oh my God, I see these volumes that, in my grandfather's attic, or I see them at yard sales all the time, and you avoid them for that reason, you do not know what you're missing. They are so incredible. They are so incredibly well written that I can't describe the beauty of it. You just have to trust me on this. Just get a Bruce Catton book the next time you see one at a library sale. Get one and just read it. Start reading it. It won't take you more than 10 pages to see what I mean. I know I said that about Samuel Eliot Morison, but the same thing is true for Bruce Catton and all the really great historians that are great wordsmiths first. These are amazing volumes, just amazing. Mine are underlined on every page with some turn of phrase that no one has beaten. Okay, then we have Ben Goldfarb. This is Eager, his great nerdy book on beavers, all about beavers. I had a great time with this book. I loved it. I believe that I reviewed it. I certainly interviewed the author. I had just a blast with it. I love natural history books, and I especially love them when they're that much fun and that good. And then there's this last one, which I reviewed and loved it. This is Steve Broussard's book, The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, which I don't think has come out in paperback yet. I don't think Eager has either. These are just examples of books that were so good that I brought them right into this room. I knew that this is where they were going to end up, so I just brought them in here. And that is it. That is this next library shelf. So we're going to move just straight on to the next one tomorrow. I'm trying to see if there's any impediment to that, but I don't. We'll just keep going. We'll just keep going on here. It's going to get a little bit iffy in the next bookcase over. We're going to get to the next bookcase over in no time at all. And the next bookcase over is a little bit raggedy because it's the one within reach of when I'm sitting on the bed. So it isn't quite as settled as these others, but we'll figure it out. So I'll wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.